Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We're in James chapter 5. We're going to be starting verse 10 this lesson. In fact, we're going to be looking at verses 10 and 11 and finishing our series of messages on James encouraging his readers to be looking for the Lord's coming. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, let's read verses 10 and 11. And he says here, behold, take my brethren, the prophets, who have spoken in the name of the Lord for an example of suffering, affliction, and of patience. Behold, we count them happy which endure. You have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercies. Now, James here is using the lives of the Old Testament prophets as an example by which his readers should mold their lives after. The prophets were persecuted, they were oppressed, just like his readers are being, in a sense, persecuted and oppressed. But they expressed great patience. The prophets of the Old Testament expressed great patience, macrothumia, long suffering in their afflictions. Christians everywhere consider the prophets to have been blessed by God greatly because they exercised long suffering in their afflictions. So then we should do the same. I mean, we look at Isaiah and Jeremiah and different things that the Old Testament prophets went through. Jeremiah being thrown in a pit, and we think of Daniel being thrown in the lion's den, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego thrown in the fiery furnace. You know, we think of these people as great men of God. Yeah, they were, but and we say, well, I wish I was that great. Okay, but are you willing are you willing to be thrown into a lion's den? You willing to be thrown into a pit? Right? Are you willing to be thrown into the fiery furnace like these men were? You know, we like to look back and think, boy, they were such great people, strong in faith. And they were. But they were strong in faith because James chapter 1 says faith comes, strong faith comes through persecutions, through trials, through tribulations. Many of the prophets lacked food, housing. They were hated and rejected. They were put in prison and they were killed. Yet at the same time, many Christians would love to have the respect and the blessings that Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Daniel and Nathan all have in heaven right now. When we think of these, when we think of these great men of God that are in heaven, we think, they're shining like the stars in the sky. They're shining bright like the sun. Well, maybe they are. And you think, well, I wish when I get to heaven I would shine that bright. Well, you got to go through what they went through. They put up with it. They lacked food. They were killed. They were, put in prison. All these things. Are you willing to go through that and remain faithful to God? If you are, then you'll shine bright like the sun too in heaven. The prophets' lives were more completely dependent upon God. We kind of envy these Old Testament prophets and we want their rewards, but we are not so sure that we want to pay the price that they paid. They paid a high price to get the kind of, in a sense, reputation that they have, that they are considered great men of the Old Testament. And we kind of envy them for having that. And yet, are we willing to go through what they went through to get that? And he says here in verse 11, behold, we count them happy which endure. We have heard what of the patience of Job. Now, the sum of all that Job went through and his approach to it is summed up in that he refused to curse God and die. Job chapter 2, verses 9 and 10, and it says here, then said his wife unto him, do you still retain your integrity? Curse God and die. Verse 10, but Job said unto her, you speak as one of the foolish women speaks. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of God? And shall we not receive evil? In all this, did not Job sin with his lips? The end of Job's life and how God abundantly restored to Job great blessings and wealth and children. It's a testimony that God is very pitiful and God is of tender mercies. He really is. God can restore the years that the cankerworm has eaten. Always remember, the end result of your life will be infinitely greater than anything that you experience here on earth. And I'm referring to our life in heaven. When we get to heaven, what we experience in heaven will be far greater. It's totally unimaginable what we're going to go through, what we're going to experience. But we need to remain faithful to God and His Word here, no matter what circumstance we're put in. And I'll tell you, I'll just be honest with you, I think that those people who are getting the greatest rewards are those who didn't really have much here on this earth. We complain and we think, the prosperity gospel has done a lot to, has done a lot to not portray the heart of God towards us getting rewards in heaven, because we think that this life is made up of getting and praising God because we have this and that and the other. We have lots of money. We have the cars and the motorcycle and the land and the property and all this stuff that God is blessing us. But yet none of the prophets in the Old Testament, they had any of that. And yet they're tremendous in heaven. Their rewards in heaven is because they went through suffering. They went through great times of suffering. And our rewards in heaven are based upon how we approach God's Word and the faithfulness with which we approach it. Staying true to God and His character, trusting Him in any situation. Paul said, I have learned that no matter what situation I am in, to be faithful unto Him, to trust God, to be patient. And that this is what we need to do also. No matter what situation God puts us in, we need to remain faithful unto God. And God could trust us to put us in a situation for His glory. All right, we're going to continue on in verse 12 next lesson. Verse 12 deals with vows, making vows, right? But until then, walk with the Lord. I know He walks with you.